There's something I need to talk to you about. Could you sign this? Huh? Wait a minute. What's going on? What does it mean? It means I want a divorce. You are no longer of any use to me. I couldn't understand what he meant by no longer of any use. What does that mean? And bringing a divorce paper. What is he thinking? You want to divorce me? I don't understand. What happened? Did I do something wrong? It's not that you did something wrong, but you've become a nuisance. Actually, I've got someone else pregnant. What? I was too shocked to say anything. I wasn't pregnant. We had been trying for a child since getting married, but maybe due to my condition, we hadn't been blessed with children. I wasn't particularly eager for children, and with work at the company, I hadn't been too concerned. Could it be that my husband has had children with the other woman? I'm not pregnant, though. Like a menopausal hag like you could get pregnant? You can't have children, don't earn much. You have no appeal as a woman. And you're only good as a maid for a few more years. I've decided to remarry a young, fresh woman, so you're no longer needed. Smirking, he said this to me. I couldn't tell what he was thinking or feeling. But the only thing I was sure of was that he's a lost cause. So, you've been cheating, huh? You are the worst. Don't you have anything to say for betraying me? I've been taking care of a charmless woman like you all this time. Why should I be the one to apologize? You should be thanking me for looking after you for years. I cannot remain silent after being told something so terrible. Moreover, there was one fact I hadn't told my husband yet that could turn the tables. When I calmly informed my husband of this particular fact. My name is Catherine, and I'm currently running a company. This company was managed by my father, but I took over as president when his health declined. I believe Catherine can continue to manage things well. Please do your best. Don't worry about the company, leave it to me. You should focus on your health, Dad. I had never run a company before, but after graduating from university, I started working at a small venture company, gaining experience in management along the way. With that experience, I thought I understood what was important in running a company. Though it was tough at first, with the help of the senior staff, I managed to keep the business going. Ms. Catherine. You've been working non-stop lately, are you okay? You need to rest occasionally, for both your mental and physical health. No. If I, the top, don't work, who will follow? Besides, I've always been physically strong, so don't worry. I was working from morning till night, every day. To the point that my employees worried about me, and I was exhausted. But more than that, I felt a responsibility as the president, not to ruin what my father had built. Also, being young, if I acted like a lord, no one would follow me. That's why I worked harder and continued to make more efforts than anyone else. The company continued to grow, and our annual sales kept increasing. I was receiving a modest salary, but I made sure to give back to my employees. So the atmosphere within the company was good. With the business running smoothly, I was able to find some time for my personal life. And as I was reaching the age where I needed to think about marriage, I started looking for a partner. Among the men I met there was one who was incredibly kind to me. I had a great time today. Shall we go out for dinner again next week? Of course. I'm free next weekend, so let's keep in touch. Got it. Take care on your way home. Although he wasn't exactly my type, I understood the difference between a couple and a married couple, as many of my friends were married. By this age, I knew how to choose a life partner. He wasn't my type, but I believed him to be trustworthy and thought we could build a good marriage together. We started dating, and about half a year later, we got married. It wasn't a romantic marriage, and we were both not that young. But we thought we would live a happy married life in our own way. There was something I hadn't yet told my husband about running the company. I had mentioned that I inherited a company from my father, but I said it had an annual revenue of about 1 million, and that I earned less than the average salaried worker. I didn't intend to hide the financial details. I just thought that money wasn't so important in an equal marriage life. Therefore, I didn't talk about the exact amounts. The company actually made close to 200 million in annual sales. But since I only took a slightly higher salary than an average salaried worker, I didn't consider myself wealthy. My husband was busy with work now, and I thought I'd talk about the company again once things settled down. However, one day, half a year into our marriage, "Hey, where were you last night?" "Huh? Last night? I heard from a friend who works at a nightclub that you were there. What were you doing?" I confronted my husband as soon as he got back from work, but it was true. A high school friend of mine, who now works as a bouncer at a nightclub, contacted me saying that my husband was there with a few young men. It's not that going to a nightclub immediately means cheating. And I understand that some company socializing is unavoidable. However, it's not something to feel good about. According to my friend, the husband brought his juniors with him. It would be understandable if he was brought there by his seniors or bosses. But bringing juniors meant he took the initiative. Why would a married man do such a thing? I had those feelings. And you brought the juniors. Why would you do that? Didn't you think about how I would feel? I have to let the juniors relax a bit, right? Besides, if I get promoted, they'll be my subordinates. So I have to build a good relationship with them. But that doesn't mean you have to go to a nightclub. I think going to a pub would be just fine. What? Are you jealous? We're both old enough, don't be jealous over such things. Smirking, he spoke to me in a mocking tone. Jealousy. Indeed, I felt jealous. It might be shameful at our age, but if that's shameful, then it's also strange not to consider the feelings of others and act accordingly. It's not fair that only I am blamed. Don't you consider my feelings at all? I don't like it, so you could at least stop. It's not like it's a big deal, right? We're going to be married for many more years. So if you can't forgive a little womanizing, we won't last. He spoke as if he was entirely in the right. Does he truly believe he's done nothing wrong? Despite me saying I'm uncomfortable, he only insists on his perspective. This isn't a discussion, it's a one-way street, and I thought it pointless to continue. So I went back to my room for the day. I hadn't felt this during our dating period, but maybe this is his true character. My husband always prioritizes himself, indifferent to how his actions affect others. That seems to be his mindset. After that realization, my view of my husband changed. Observing his words and actions in daily life, his selfishness stood out. Welcome home. Dinner is ready. I've already eaten, so no worries there. Is the bath ready? I'd like it with rose bath salts today. Can you prepare that? Again? If you're going to eat out, you should let me know. That way, I won't wait for you and I'll just prepare my own meal. I've also filled the bath, so heat it up yourself. You're making a fuss over nothing. And is it with rose bath salts? No, but I won't refill it just for that, it's a waste of water. I'm in the mood for roses, so nothing else will do. I was speechless before my husband, who spoke as if what he said was the norm. However, considering his self-centered nature, it wasn't strange. He pays for major expenses like rent and the car, while I cover utilities and groceries. Because it's not his money, he casually asks to refill the bath. If he considered our finances or me, he wouldn't say such things. I've told him multiple times to let me know if he wants something specific for the bath. But my husband, who finds a simple message too bothersome, complains afterward. My patience was wearing thin. Despite repeated discussions, he never improved, pushing my frustration to its peak. If I let it go, his words and actions will only escalate. I felt it was time to speak up firmly for the sake of our marriage. Look, I've been thinking, you're being too selfish. Sending a simple message isn't hard work, and could you please consider me a bit more? I pay for the water bills, so stop wasting it. We're not swimming in money, you know? Are you serious with that? Yes, I'm serious. That's why I'm upset. Can't you understand my feelings? Don't mess with me. How dare you, a wife, defy her husband? He slammed the table forcefully. My heart raced, and I was lost for words. The irritation and anger I felt towards him vanished, leaving only fear. It was the first time I truly saw this side of him, and it was frightening. I feared that challenging him further might lead to physical harm. At that moment, my resolve to confront him about his behavior vanished, replaced by the determination not to anger him further. Getting cocky for a wife, huh? Stop messing around. You should understand your place before you speak. There's no reason for a woman to defy a man. I understand. I'm sorry for making you angry. Don't make me angry again, okay? I only ask one thing of you, consider your place and act accordingly. After saying that, he went to his room. Fearing further anger, I immediately went to refill the bath, adding the requested rose bath salts. By then, the thought of wasting money on refilling the bath was the least of my concerns. All I could think about was how to avoid angering him further. Since then, my perception of and feelings towards my husband have drastically changed. Instead of focusing on maintaining a good marital relationship, I shifted towards managing his moods. I agreed to whatever he said and never voiced my minor complaints. There was no longer equality in our relationship. Far from the image of a happy marriage, I was afraid to witness my husband's true nature again. It had become a significant trauma for me, leading to a life where I was constantly careful not to anger him. One day, the situation escalated. I need to talk to you. Could you sign this? Huh? Wait a minute. What's going on? What does it mean? It means I want a divorce. You are no longer of any use to me. I couldn't understand what he meant by no longer of any use. What does that mean? And bringing a divorce paper. What is he thinking? Since that day, I had always complied with his demands. If he wanted to eat something, even if I had already prepared dinner, I would make it again and never complained about his whims. Thus, it had seemed like he had almost stopped being angry with me. What could he possibly be dissatisfied with? However, becoming emotional might trigger another outburst from him. With this fear in mind, I carefully chose my words so as not to provoke him. You want a divorce from me? I don't understand. What happened? Did I do something wrong? It's not that you did something wrong, but you've become a nuisance. Actually, I've got someone else pregnant. What? I was too shocked to speak. I wasn't pregnant. We had been trying to have a child since getting married. But perhaps due to my condition, we hadn't been successful. I wasn't particularly eager for children, given my focus on the company. Could it be that my husband has had children with the other woman? I'm not pregnant, though. Like a menopausal hag like you could get pregnant? You can't have children, don't earn much. You have no appeal as a woman. And you're only good as a maid for a few more years. I've decided to remarry a young, fresh woman, so you're no longer needed. Smirking, he said this to me. I couldn't tell what he was thinking or feeling. But the only thing I was sure of was that he's a lost cause. Did he not have a human heart? I wanted to confront him about whether he felt any guilt for his actions, or if he thought he could do anything to me without consequence. I could hardly understand his feelings and didn't even want to. In hindsight, I was financially independent and didn't need to depend on him. But if I divorce him here, I don't know if I can remarry someone in the future. I wasn't confident in my looks, and at my age, remarrying would be difficult. That's why I had chosen the stability of the moment. So, you've been cheating, huh? You are the worst. Aren't you going to apologize for betraying me? I've been taking care of a charmless woman like you all this time. Why should I be the one to apologize? You should be thanking me for taking care of you for years. Thanking you, for what? I've been the one paying for our living expenses. And I don't think I've done anything to deserve complaints. Your attitude of not supporting your man is the problem. You don't understand your place at all. After he expressed his desire for a divorce, I no longer felt the need to tiptoe around him. I began to voice all my thoughts. It was clear how terrible his character was. Whether he looked down on just me or all women was unclear. What did he think he was? If he thought he was that important, he was sorely mistaken. Well, that's fine. I have no intention of continuing this marriage with someone like you. I'll sign the divorce papers and leave immediately. That would be helpful. Oh, a bit too late for that. He was smirking at his phone before saying that to me. I didn't understand what he meant. Shortly after, the intercom rang. I wondered who it could be, considering my husband usually had me answer it. But this time, he went to answer it himself. Perhaps it was someone he knew. The moment that thought crossed my mind. A high-pitched female voice could be heard from the entrance. Could it be my husband's mistress? By the time I considered this, she had already made her way into the living room. Wearing a miniskirt and sleeveless top, fully made up, was a blonde young woman. There was no doubt she was my husband's mistress, but why bring her home? It was outright disrespectful. We weren't even divorced yet, and there was no reason for her to meet me. I was incensed but managed to keep my anger in check. Nice to meet you. I've only seen photos, but you really are an old lady. That was the first thing she said upon seeing me. A woman without a shred of dignity. That was my first impression. Naturally, being my husband's mistress meant I wouldn't have a good impression of her. But her mere presence evoked a visceral disgust. Well, she was a perfect match for a husband who continually looked down on me and betrayed me. I felt sorry for the child that was going to be brought into this world. To be raised by two individuals devoid of parental qualifications. All I hoped was that the child wouldn't lead a tragic life. That was the extent of my concern. So, what brings you here? You didn't need to come while I was still here. I just wanted to see the face of the loser whose husband I stole. But it looks like you never stood a chance anyway. What must she think of other people? Expecting anything from someone so devoid of class was futile. Moreover, I recognized the keychain on the mistress's bag. So, no apologies? For stealing someone's husband and offering no apology is quite outrageous, don't you think? Keep your whining to a minimum, will you? Why would I apologize? The world is a place where the strong prevail over the weak. It's your fault for being taken from. Don't blame your lack of appeal on me. All right. Then don't blame me when your actions, deemed to lack integrity, cost you your job. Huh? What are you talking about? Are you trying to threaten? It's disgraceful, stop it. Who's really being disgraceful here? I wanted to retort strongly, but responding to every little thing was a waste of time. I wanted to say what needed to be said and get out of there. Staying any longer in the company of these two traitors was the worst feeling. That keychain on your bag, it's the company mascot, right? It's quite a well-known corporation. Do you work there by any chance? Yes, that's right. Unlike you, I'm a successful person. I've achieved economic success, and my looks are on par with a model. There's not a single aspect in which you could beat me. Then that's too bad. You didn't realize you were talking to the president of the company you're employed at. What? Her expression changed instantly when I said that. I hadn't expected one of my own employees to be my husband's mistress. But the world is indeed small. I was surprised too, but yes, you're an employee at my company. I don't intend to bring personal issues into company management or harass you. But I don't think someone who steals others' husbands has a place in our company. Wait a minute. That's a lie, right? There's no way someone like you could be the president of such a large company. It's true. If you don't believe me, why don't you ask one of the department heads? After saying this, the mistress immediately contacted someone. Probably to verify if I was indeed the company's president. Her face turned ashen as she realized the truth, and she began to prostrate herself before me. I hadn't expected her to turn on a dime like that. But did she really think a simple act of prostration would erase all her actions? If so, she's grossly underestimated the situation. Society isn't so lenient that a mere apology can absolve one's actions. Especially not when you've wrecked a home and ruined a life. A single act of kneeling can't possibly make amends for that. I'm sorry. It wasn't like I had bad intentions. You knew he was married, yet you engaged in an affair, didn't you? And now you say you had no bad intentions? Do you really think that excuse holds any water? I just got carried away. And I'm a victim here too. That's right. Despite taking precautions, he removed them. And I ended up with an unwanted pregnancy. Please help me. At her words, my husband's face changed, probably lying. Given his prior assertion that she was possessed by some momentary folly. Moreover, she had desperately tried to assert her superiority over me. After all that, now claiming victimhood is wrong. Not that I'm siding with my husband, but this seems too much even for him. Likely, this is her true character showing. Wait a minute. Don't lie about me tampering with contraception. You were the one constantly saying you wanted to have my baby. That's not true. Why would I want a baby with a married man? So, you portray yourself as the victim to seek sympathy? You suck. Shut up. I wish they wouldn't air such an ugly quarrel before me. Seeing two betrayers turn against each other, unaware of how I might feel, is appalling. Aren't they embarrassed? Exposing themselves like this. It's hard to see them as anything but devoid of pride. Perhaps they're driven to a corner, but they're mistaken if they think this ends here. I don't plan on aiding either of them, and they will both face the consequences of their actions. Well, whatever. I'll be demanding a fair settlement from both of you. You should learn what it means to have an affair while married and pay the price for it. Wait a sec. You don't need such petty cash, do you? Excuse me? What are you talking about? I mean, she works for a huge company, right? We need to talk about this. You're the boss of that place, aren't you? Yes, I am. Our annual revenue is around 330 million, I suppose. But working there isn't about the money for me. And being the president doesn't mean I won't claim damages. No matter how much money one has, as a member of society, one must take responsibility for their actions. They have hurt me and stolen my precious time, something that can never be returned. They should better understand why laws exist. I don't care if your baby will cost you, I'll demand what's due. And if you can't pay, we'll go to court. I'm that serious, so don't underestimate me. Please wait. Don't say that. I'll do anything, even kneel. I'm truly sorry. I deeply regret my actions. Regret and kneeling now change nothing. What I seek isn't an apology or your prostration. You do understand my words, right? But instead of making excuses, why not talk to friends or family about helping you pay the damages you can't afford? As I said this, she broke down crying. Though it seemed like I was cast as the villain, I hadn't done anything wrong. Demanding compensation for being cheated on is a natural right. This has nothing to do with me being a company president, it's about basic human decency. Watching her crumble, I gathered my things and decided to return to my parents' home for the time being. Ignoring all subsequent attempts at contact from my husband and his mistress, I decided to leave everything in the hands of my lawyer. A month later, the divorce was finalized, and I successfully claimed a substantial amount in damages from both of them. Demanding a lump sum payment was a given. I couldn't trust people capable of betrayal to stick to a payment plan. As a result, my ex-husband nearly drained his savings, now reportedly penniless. The young mistress, lacking sufficient funds, resorted to begging her parents to cover the payment. Furthermore, a common acquaintance shared that the pair did not end up remarrying, but separated instead. Likely, her attempt to play the victim in front of me played a part in their split. Even my ex-husband probably didn't want to remarry someone who would betray others at the drop of a hat. It's ironic, considering the betrayal I experienced at their hands. Yet neither seemed a suitable match for the other. Regardless of their relationship status, my ex-husband is now obligated to pay child support. Whether he will fulfill this responsibility remains to be seen. Both are set for a difficult life ahead. Not just financially, but also in terms of employment and personal relations. The repercussions of their actions will only magnify over time, making them realize the gravity of their decisions. Any future apologies or regrets will be too late. I guess people who can't judge right from wrong and can only be loyal to their immediate desires end up living a life like my ex-husband and his mistress, facing consequences they hadn't anticipated. Meanwhile, I continue to manage my company successfully, enjoying my days. I have no plans for remarriage or dating at the moment, choosing instead to cherish my own time. There's a wide array of personalities in the world. Yet what my ex-husband and his mistress did goes beyond mere personality differences. I have no intention of repeating their mistakes, and plan to be more selective about my associations moving forward. Life is too precious to waste any moment of it. Father's cold gaze looked down upon me. His eyes filled with disdain as if he was looking at something filthy. Without a second thought for his seriously ill daughter, he abandoned my mother and walked away. Outside, the woman who made my mother shed tears of frustration was probably waiting for him. I will raise this child by myself. We don't need you. With a sneer, my father turned his back on us and walked out the door. After it coldly shut, my mother and I cried endlessly. However, a few days passed, and our dire situation took a dramatic turn. Despite ignoring his persistent calls, I finally had the courage to say to my father, "Father? I don't recall having a father, aren't you mistaking something?" The tables had turned. My mother and I feared nothing anymore. "I'm coming over now," the man who once was my father bellowed. My mother and I decided to set a trap for him as we waited. My name is Alice, a normal 11-year-old girl who could be found anywhere. The only difference is that I have a very weak body. I've been sickly since I can remember and could hardly ever attend school properly. Most of my waking hours are spent at home, reading books or drawing. I always feel sorry for the trouble I cause my mother. My mother's name is Sherry. Despite also having a weak constitution, she works from morning till night for my sake. Don't worry about anything, Alice. It's okay. I will work hard. The person making my mother's difficult life even harder was my father, Tom. In the stories I read, there are many unworthy adults and villains. Frankly, my father was worse than any character in those stories, both as a person and as a parent. My earliest memories are of my father making my mother cry. He never contributed financially to the household, instead spending his time wandering aimlessly. My mother paid for everything including the water, electricity, gas, and food bills. I can't forget how desperately my mother clung to him, no matter how harshly he treated her. Please, cooperate. Think about your family for once. You're annoying, let go of me. Do you want to get hit? My father had a mistress and made no effort to hide it. You'd think my mother would have divorced him, but she had no relatives to turn to. She didn't want her daughter to grow up without parents, like her. My father knew this and used it to torment her further. You don't want Alice to grow up with just one parent, do you? Then don't interfere with what I do. Is that something a father would say? You're the worst. Shut up. Hey, you know what? Don't even think about crying to my relatives or your work colleagues. If you try anything funny, we're getting a divorce. Then Alice will have only one parent. I felt more like a hostage than a daughter. As I grew older, I began to despise my own weakness. If only I were stronger, I could have stood up to my father alongside my mother. To make matters worse, my father was not only a terrible person but also into alcohol and gambling. This often left him short of money, and it seemed he caused trouble at work as well. As far as I know, my father changed jobs 5 times. Always complaining about his coworkers at home. Everyone's looking down on me. Just you wait, you bastards. After making a huge mistake at work due to a hangover, he would try to relieve his stress through gambling. When he lost, my mother was always the target of his frustration. He frequently stole money from her, even snatching her wallet to take out cash. Stop. How are we supposed to live this month without this little money? Shut up. If you need money, sell your clothes or whatever. Whenever my parents argued, I always curled up inside my blanket, blocking my ears and closing my eyes, shaking until the storm passed. Eventually, I would hear the violent slam of the front door followed by my mother's sobbing. By then, my pillow was usually wet with tears. I couldn't stand the situation I was in. My mother would come into my room with swollen red eyes. I'm sorry for making such a noise, Alice. She always tried to wear a brave smile. What else could I do but smile back and assure her it was okay? One day, I discovered something alarming on my mother's head and couldn't help but exclaim loudly. Mom, your head. Your hair. Oh, this. I'm sorry, it looks so unsightly. A large patch of hair had fallen out from my mother's head, a clear case of alopecia areata. I was shocked as if it were happening to me. What shocked me even more was learning that this wasn't the first occurrence. My mother looked at me with eyes clouded with resignation and tiredness, managing only a small smile. It's okay. It'll grow back on its own, like before. It's not in a noticeable spot. But I'm sorry, Mom. If only I were stronger. What are you talking about? You've done nothing wrong. You mustn't blame yourself. Never. The only thing I could do for my mother was to draw pictures for her. With my limited mobility, I expanded the wings of my imagination. I would bring to life vibrant worlds on blank sheets of paper with my colored pencils and crayons, hoping to make my mother smile. That strong desire has always been at the heart of my creativity. One day, the doorbell rang unusually. My mother's voice hardened as she answered. It seemed like bad news. My mother repeatedly asked the person at the door to leave, saying my father was not home. Who could it be? After a brief exchange through the intercom, my mother reluctantly opened the door. 3 large men in suits entered, all with stern looks on their faces. The most intimidating one stated they had lent money to my father. There was paperwork, and today was the repayment deadline. Your dad isn't here. I don't know where he is, and we don't have any money to give you. My mother must have thought they would understand if she explained the situation. But they didn't. The men started rummaging through our house, opening drawers, searching through cupboards, moving furniture, and even lifting up the tatami mats. The moment one of them took out a velvet box from the shelf, my mother's demeanor changed drastically. No. Please, not that. My mother had grown up in an orphanage and received a ring set with a real gemstone from the wife of the director when she left. It was valuable enough to be sold for a significant amount. The men had found and taken this treasured item. That's very important to me. Please give it back. No matter how much my mother resisted, the men were unmoved. They continued to search for anything of value, turning the room upside down. My mother's cries and screams were like those of a child's. I had never seen her so distraught before. After the men left, my mother collapsed amid the mess, hanging her head for a long time. Suddenly, she began throwing anything she could find around her, crying and groaning as if something pent up had exploded within her. My mother's frenzied state was terrifying. When I hugged her from behind, she came back to herself and began to sob softly. I'm sorry. Alice, I'm so sorry. Mom, it's not your fault. It's okay. Everything will be okay. The next day, after we had finished cleaning up, my father returned home in an unusually good mood, shockingly with a woman by his side. She had a bold and flashy appearance. Sorry, Lily, for the mess. Sherry. Make some tea. Alice, you're in the way. Go somewhere else. Oh, is this the sick daughter? That won't do, will it? Dragging down Daddy, huh? My drawings had fallen to a corner of the room. Lily, the woman referred to, picked one up without permission. She wouldn't give it back, even as I reached for it. In the end, she just tossed it aside. What a terrible drawing. No talent here. This belongs in the trash. That was the first time someone had evaluated my art. Lily's mocking tone deeply hurt me, even as a child. Neither Lily nor my father openly acknowledged their relationship, but it was clear to see. They were undoubtedly lovers. Having a partner bring a lover home and then being forced to serve them tea. I can't even begin to imagine the humiliation my mother felt. Furthermore, seizing a moment of distraction, my father stealthily took my mother's wallet. No. Not that money. Idiot. If you didn't want it stolen, you should have kept it safe. That's for Alice's hospital bills. Please, not that. My mother desperately tried to retrieve the money, as my father mockingly dodged her around the room, all while Lily laughed uproariously at their expense. It was a sickening sight. Hey, Lily, let's go out for drinks. Can't breathe in this place.
Bye. Bye.
Make sure you save up some more money for us, okay? My father converted the money my mother earned for my hospital bills into drinking money for his affair. I couldn't imagine anyone else doing such a thing, but my father was different. He must have thought it didn't matter what happened to my mother or me. After roughly pushing my pleading mother aside, he left with his lover. It was just after I turned 11. My health worsened significantly. I started getting fevers frequently and often couldn't get up due to pain throughout my body. After visiting the hospital with my mother, I was diagnosed with a terrifying illness: pediatric cancer. Me? My mother must have heard everything from the doctor first. Her eyes were wet with tears, her makeup smudged and messy. Why does it always have to be me who suffers like this? Things would only get worse from here, with tougher battles and increasing medical expenses. My mother would surely work herself to the bone for me. But then, my father would just squander that money. Frankly, our prospects seemed bleak. It was so bad, it was almost laughable. I didn't lose my composure. Instead, I felt a new resolve. Can I still draw? Even with pediatric cancer? The doctor assured me I could and even suggested I sell my artwork, not just display it. We live in an era where individuals can connect with the world and promote themselves. There are countless avenues for selling artwork. The doctor, who also liked art, offered to buy some if I decided to sell. I had many drawings at home. It had never occurred to me to put a price on them and sell them. My mother and I immediately began researching how to sell my art online. We found sites for auctions and others that allowed artists to gather fans and patrons. A few days later, after a long absence, my father came home again. He seemed to have come to pick up some clothes. Without a word, he began stuffing his bag with garments. When I revealed that I had developed pediatric cancer, my father, unbelievably, snorted with laughter. So, it's all over then, huh? You'll be kicking the bucket soon, eh? How can you say such a thing to your own daughter? It's the truth, isn't it? Lucky you, Sherry. You'll be rid of the burden. Enough already. My father stood up, looking down at me with a cold gaze. As if he was looking at something filthy, utterly displeased. Leaving me, afflicted with pediatric cancer, and abandoning my mother, my father left. Outside, surely, Lily was waiting, the woman who made my mother shed tears of frustration.
See ya.
Alice. A sick kid like you isn't my child. It would have been better if you hadn't existed from the start. I'll do what I want, so you guys do whatever you want too. I will raise this child by myself. The one who is not needed is you. My father sneered at my mother's soulful cry and turned his back. After the front door coldly closed, my mother and I embraced and cried. However, those tears were actually of joy, liberated from a worthless man. One day, while I was drawing in my room as usual, my mother's smartphone rang with a call from my father for the first time in a long while. He wanted to speak to me. I put down my pencil and answered the phone. His voice sounded unusually cheery and somewhat frivolous. Hey, Alice. It's been a while, hasn't it? How's the illness? Are you keeping well? What do you want? If it's nothing, I want to hang up. Oh come on, don't be so cold. You know, I am your real father? Father? I don't have a father, do I? I could hear him clicking his tongue over the phone, clearly irritated by my response. What a selfish man. I was getting tired of this conversation. Why don't you just say it? You found out my paintings are selling for a high price, didn't you?
Yeah.
That's right. Alice, you've got talent for art. There was a TV interview, right? I saw it. The girl who continues to paint while battling illness, wasn't it? Wow, as a father, I was so proud. Indeed, my artwork has received worldwide acclaim. Encouraged by my doctor, the results came from selling my work online. The more I released, the higher they sold at auction. An unbelievable amount of money was being transferred into my bank account every month. I had my mother quit all her jobs to focus on caring for me. Our time together increased, my mother's health visibly improved, and it was all positive. I had anticipated that my father would contact us eventually, flattering us in hopes of leeching off our success. You're even streaming videos of you drawing, right? I heard you've got 2,000 subscribers? That alone should be enough to live on, right? Wow, you really are amazing. Thanks. Is that all you called for? Because I'm going to hang up now. Wait. That's not it. Look, Alice, I've got a bit of a situation. Lately, I've been feeling a bit unwell, can't really work much. I'm completely broke. Oh, that's too bad.
Goodbye.
Then. Wait. Please, I'm begging you. You understand, right? Just lend me a little money. You're making a fortune, aren't you? Then you could spare a little for me, couldn't you? What a despicable man. Doesn't he have any shame? After looking at me as if I was something filthy and abandoning me. As soon as the wind changes, he's ready to flip his stance and grovel. Truly worthless. It wasn't a joke. Neither my mother nor I had any intention of giving a single penny to such a low man. Why should I give you money? That makes no sense. What do you mean it doesn't make sense? I'm your father. You're my daughter. Isn't that reason enough? Did you hit your head somewhere? I believe you were the one who said a sick kid like you isn't my child. No, that was. What I meant was, it was just a figure of speech. I didn't mean it. Thinking I could be deceived by such a lie was a huge mistake. I thoroughly rejected my father, refusing everything he said. Then, the father who had been groveling showed his true, filthy nature. Hey. Cut it out. You're getting cocky just because I've been humble. Do you even realize you owe your life to me? Show some gratitude. Gratitude? To you? I have grievances, not gratitude. Don't you get it? All you've done is make Mom and me suffer and cry with your actions. Don't start playing the father role now. Oh, is that so? Fine, I got it. I'm coming over right now. My father's threat was exactly what I expected. This was it. After being victimized for so long, it was time to settle scores. I ended the call and informed my mother that my father was coming. She nodded. Just as planned. Let's contact them and get ready. Right. And prepare a new canvas. I've got something new I want to paint. Lately, my urge to create was stronger than ever. The results were exhilarating, and I couldn't stop painting. The anger towards my father fueled my passion for art. In that sense, I might even owe him thanks. Hours later, my father arrived, with his mistress Lily in tow. The contempt in their gaze as they looked at my mother and me was palpable. My father looked around the room and scoffed. Tripods, cameras, canvases, easels. What's with all these paints and brushes? Acting like a real artist, huh? A pediatric cancer patient burning life to paint, right? And where are the paintings? Doesn't look like there's a single one here. Did you hide them? They used to be all over the place. Hurry up and bring them out. The two of them didn't hold back their spiteful comments. I felt a burning rage. I hadn't forgotten Lily's dismissive, terrible comment about my art. Not that her taste was reliable anyway. I manage all of Alice's works. And no, I won't tell you where they are. Honestly, I couldn't care less about the paintings. Give us the money. You earn, we take. That's how everyone gets happy, right? Let's keep it going, shall we? That works for you, right? That's absurd. Why should we give Alice's hard-earned money to you? It doesn't make any sense. Even a child understands this. My mother's newfound assertiveness seemed to shock both my father and Lily. Quitting her job to focus on us had changed her. She looked healthier, more vibrant, and seemed to radiate strength. Moreover, Tom, all you've ever done is cause distress. As Alice said on the phone, we have grievances, not gratitude. Not a penny for you, so get that straight. Oh, scary, scary. Once you have money, suddenly you're all high and mighty. Don't underestimate me, you ugly woman. I can take down 2 women anytime. Want to see how painful I can make it? By force? Go ahead if you think you can. Thanks to someone. I've suffered enough to develop alopecia. And even lost a precious gemstone given by someone I respected. Come if you dare. I'll show you just how angry I am. This was a fierceness in my mother I'd never seen before, filled with determination. Sharp objects like painting knives were within reach, warning of pain for any reckless approach. Perhaps fearing the consequences, my father did not advance but only glared. Wow, you've really changed, haven't you? Completely different from before. Yes, I've changed. I've learned from my mistakes. I've always regretted making Alice suffer because of my weaknesses. I should have divorced you long ago. We would have been better off without you from the start. Oh, really? So what are you going to do about it? You're going to kick me out? My father stepped forward, met by my mother, who stepped up without backing down. Of course, we're going to kick you out. This is our home, and you have no place here. You're being evicted, obviously. You have no place here. And just so you know, I'm suing you. I'll be filing a complaint with the court, so prepare yourself. Huh? What are you talking about, making such a fuss? Suing me for what? I'll bring everything to light. How I was oppressed by my husband on a daily basis, and the constant suffering. I even have medical records for my alopecia due to stress. There's no escaping this, so just get ready. We have plenty of funds for a lawsuit. Through managing the finances and artwork, I've gotten to know some excellent lawyers. Moreover, I'm somewhat of a public figure now. There's no way anyone would let harm come to my mother without consequences. Essentially, Tom has been a loser for a long time. He can't compete with us now. Realizing this, he started to laugh nervously. Don't be so mad. I get it, okay? I don't want to escalate things. I'll stop trying to force my way. I don't want to get arrested or stabbed by one of Alice's fans, after all. So, what will you do? The only option left is to leave without doing anything else, right? Don't be so cold. Think about it, haven't I done fatherly things occasionally? Bringing gifts, praising your cooking, even contributing money to the household at times. Isn't that worth something? How ridiculous. How shameless. Because of him, my mother and I suffered immensely, crying day after day. Memories of distress are all we have. I don't recall any fatherly deeds from him. But it seems Tom and Lily won't leave just because we ask them to. My mother and I exchanged looks and decided to let Tom and Lily self-destruct in their squabble. Okay, fine. You can have one of my paintings. Really? That's my girl, Alice. You're such a sweetheart. Thank you, Alice. So, where is it? I don't see any paintings here. Did you hide them? They used to be all over the place. Come on, show them to us. As Tom and Lily greedily scanned the room, I felt a surge of revulsion. They're not here, and I haven't decided which one of you will get one, if any. What? Choose between us? Obviously, it should be me, your father. Huh? Didn't you just get told not to act like a father? I have a right to it too. After all, I've never done anything to make Alice dislike me. Tom attempted to edge closer to me, blocked by Lily. Just as expected. Both were only thinking of their own benefit. The unsightly dispute between the lovers began. Listen, both of you. Tom is the worst. He's been seeing other women besides me. And to think he's not even that good-looking, so arrogant, right? A good-for-nothing without a shred of responsibility. You're one to talk. You've been seeing other guys too. And you're married, aren't you? Just roaming around while your husband is stationed overseas. I don't care. He's probably doing the same thing, so it's fair. Their ugly quarrel continued. Witnessing this, I grew increasingly disgusted. To think I share blood with such people. It made me wish for a complete blood transfusion. My mother was utterly dismayed, her gaze towards Tom and Lily utterly cold. I wondered why she ever married such a man. That's the look she had. That's when my mother's phone rang, likely from someone else who had had enough. Hello? Yes. Yes, of course. Please hold, I'll put you on speaker, Dad. What? Dan. Tom. I've been listening, and you've been nothing but trouble. Dan? What? What's going on? Through the speaker, the angry voice of my grandfather resonated, chastising Tom for his actions and intentions, marking a turning point for our family. Away from the turmoil Tom had caused. Sherry's father had been avoiding his parental home for a long time. Because he was scared of his own father. He had also forbidden us from contacting them. However, the situation has changed now. As my grandmother and relatives on my mother's side have become allies to my mother and me. I've heard that you've been tormenting Sherry and Alice all this time. You've always been a good-for-nothing, and it seems you haven't changed a bit. Shame on you. Wait a minute. Why would Dan? What do you know? I know everything. We've all been watching everything unfold. Everyone.
Oh no.
You don't mean, through that camera? Indeed, that was the case. Since my father and Lily arrived, I had been live streaming their actions. Using the same approach I usually do for my video streams, but this time, only sharing the URL with my grandparents' house. Our relatives had gathered at my grandparents' house. Likely watching my father's disgraceful actions on their TV screen. Having to witness the extent of your stupidity has embarrassed me beyond belief. I already know everything, including where you live and where your mistress resides. All thanks to Sherry. Tom, you better be prepared. Huh? You're planning to come here? Stop. Don't you dare come. Silence. I'll grab you by the scruff of your neck and make you apologize to Sherry and Alice. My grandfather's anger was genuine, and even through the phone, it felt intense. My mother, standing firm, added to my father and Lily's despair. Running away is useless. We know your patterns, your car's license plate, and even the hotels you frequent. We've hired a detective agency to uncover everything. It's only a matter of time before you're caught. This is the worst. What is happening? This is the lowest. We have nowhere to run. It's all your fault, you worthless man. What did you say? It's because you're always wasting money that I had to find a way to get more. It was your idea to sell Alice's paintings. Have you forgotten? As they continued to argue amidst the crisis, I couldn't help but feel completely disillusioned. Whatever happens to these two despicable adults, I couldn't care less. A week later, my father and Lily were arrested by the police for shoplifting at a convenience store, seemingly out of desperation due to a lack of money. If they had access to their credit cards, they might have managed to stay on the run for another month, but they were blocked. Thanks to my mother contacting Lily's husband abroad. At the police station, my grandfather made good on his promise and confronted my foolish father. After paying a fine and being released, my father was brought before us by my grandfather. I am truly sorry for the trouble I've caused. Despite his apology and bowing in submission, neither my mother nor I were willing to forgive him. Yet, it felt like a closure of sorts. On the spot, my father was made to sign the divorce papers and was taken back to his parental home by my grandfather. Watching his dejected figure, I couldn't help but feel that he got what he deserved. My mother demanded a settlement of $15,000 from my former father for the years of oppression. Considering everything, it seemed a modest amount. My former father was also sued by Lily's husband for $20,000. A justified sum given that he had taken advantage of the husband's absence to misuse his home. Burdened with debts to pay these settlements, my former father now lives a constrained life, unable to receive help from his parents. He resides in a small apartment owned by an acquaintance, working diligently to repay his debts. His reputation tarnished, he faces a long road of redemption. Recently, my mother received a desperate call from him, pleading for help. I can't take this life anymore. I'll do anything, just help me out. You'll do anything? Then never contact me again. That's all I want. Sherry. Wait, Sherry. As for Lily, her fate wasn't much brighter than Tom's. Abandoned by her husband, who was on a business trip, she was left with nothing. Unable to reach Tom for help, she ended up lost and alone. Returning to her family would have been an option, had they not disowned her long ago. As a result, it didn't take a month for her to end up as a homeless woman, now seemingly a source of solace for others in her situation. Pediatric cancer is generally more treatable compared to cancer in adults, largely due to the effectiveness of radiation therapy and chemotherapy. Approximately 70 to 80% of cases result in recovery. I was no exception. With the money earned from my paintings, I received the best treatment available and successfully overcame cancer. Moving forward, I plan to intensify my creative efforts as a way to give back to my mother, who has endured so much because of me. To start, I've built a house with a garden, a large custom home filled with our dreams. It includes my studio, a room for my mother to relax, a home theater, and an island kitchen. It's perfect. Had I not contracted pediatric cancer and met that doctor, I wouldn't have considered selling my art. Life is unpredictable, and it's hard to know what will ultimately lead to one's fortune. This thought has deeply resonated with me. Despite everything, we managed to get through it.
Yeah.
Our perseverance was worth it. We deserve a pat ourselves on the back. Indeed, the hardships my mother and I faced were extreme. Given that, it's only fair that a lot of happiness is due to us from now on. We plan to continue supporting each other, ensuring our days are filled with smiles and joy.
Make sure everything is cleaned up. While I was having a cup of tea with Daisy, Sam said that and left. What's with that attitude? It's okay. It's not okay. Daisy got angry at me for getting used to Sam's attitude. Then, she offered to help clean. Ugh, my brother really does not know how to clean. Sam's room was such a mess. Daisy and I chatted while cleaning up. During that, Daisy reached for something. Oh, that's. I tried to stop Daisy from opening the drawer without permission. But before I could, I heard Daisy's surprised voice. What's this? Oh. What happened? Oh, no. Seeing the photo in Daisy's hand, I was speechless. A happy family photo and a completed divorce paper. That was a wake-up call. Daisy, will you help me? Of course. With a strong ally by my side, I started preparing to fight. Starting with getting rid of everything. Thinking that in my mind, I rolled up my sleeves. My name is Lisa. I am a 35-year-old housewife. I've been married for 5 years, and we don't have children. Still, I had a gentle and peaceful marriage life with Sam. Our meeting was arranged by an acquaintance, a so-called matchmaker. Both of us had just broken up with our exes and were tired of passionate romances. Sam and I shared similar values, but I didn't feel the excitement I had felt with my ex. However, thinking it was fate, I decided to marry Sam during the suitable age for marriage. Sam decided to marry me for a similar reason, so we never discussed it. Sharing the same values, we had no major troubles living together. We divided household chores and responsibilities. I handled the household chores, and Sam worked. Despite hearing about love marriages around us, I could genuinely say, I am happy about our marriage life. However, our peaceful life was suddenly disrupted. One day, Sam, who usually doesn't drink much, came home drunk. He returned at 3 a.m., and I greeted him at the entrance. Welcome back, you're late. It was supposed to be our usual routine, but Sam was acting strange that day. Shut up. It's my business when I come back. I was confused by the way he was acting. I could smell alcohol in his breath as he yelled and swore. After all, I married you to make you do household chores. Don't interfere with me. You're just a maid. That's. I was shocked to hear Sam's true feelings for the first time. Even though our relationship was a bit bizarre compared to others' relationship and marriage, I loved Sam, and I thought Sam loved me too. I wanted to marry someone younger and brag about it to everyone. That's pathetic. Pathetic? You stole my word out of my mouth. After tossing out those words, Sam quickly went into his study, lay down on his makeshift bed, and started snoring. I stood at the entrance, listening to Sam's snore, and cried. My marriage life until now seemed like an illusion. I thought it would only get harder from here. However, the next morning, Sam was his usual self again. Good morning. What time did I come back last night? I was pushed to drink a lot. Something wrong? No. Good morning. I was puzzled by Sam's behavior as if nothing had happened. Sam, concerned about my confusion, spoke to me even more. What's up? You're acting strange today. No, it's nothing. It can't be nothing. We're married, so we should be comfortable talking about everything. Then, let me say this. Unable to hold back, I told him about last night. Sam's expression gradually faded as I spoke. And the moment I finished, his attitude changed 180 degrees. So, it got out, huh? That's terrible. You must have decided to marry me based on my job, right? I married you because our values aligned. Yeah, enough of that. With those words, Sam cut off my speech and heavily sat down on a chair, then started giving orders with a jerk of his chin. Food. Make it quick. Food? Who do you think provides for you? Work properly, maid. I felt scared of the sudden change in his attitude. From then on, he began to treat me solely as a housekeeper. Hey, food. Sam no longer called me by my name, and although I was initially sad, I gradually became numb to it. Hey, isn't the bath ready? Ah, it's ready. Then say so sooner, you're so slow. I'm sorry. Eventually, I began to use polite language with Sam, and he took it as the natural attitude to have. A few months into living like this, Sam spoke up during a meal. I'm going on a business trip for a month from tomorrow. Get my things ready. A business trip? You got a problem with that? No, I understand. Sam works as a civil servant. I wondered if he really had business trips. Curious, yet I didn't dare to confirm it with Sam, who was grumpily complaining about his meal. At night, while preparing for the trip, Sam went to sleep at his usual time. I wondered how things came to this. All alone, I cried. Don't slack on the housework. Yes. That was all Sam said before leaving, not even a goodbye. The moment I was alone, I felt a sudden release of tension throughout my body. A month alone, huh? I was genuinely happy to get a break from the tense lifestyle for the first time in a while. At the same time, the thought of continuing this life for many more years slightly dampened my spirits. Well, no use worrying about it. I've got to enjoy this month no matter what. I deliberately spoke out loud to lift my spirits. Then, using my savings, I enjoyed meals out with friends, read books leisurely, and cherished my time alone. During that period, I thought a lot about the future and decided to take steps towards divorce. The first step was finding a job. However, Sam wouldn't be pleased with me working. After much consideration, I decided to try a part-time data entry job that I could do from home. Having worked as an office clerk before getting married, I had no problem using a computer. Gradually, I took on more tasks and increased my income. Just as I was getting used to this new lifestyle, Sam returned home after a month. Did you keep up with the housework? Yes. I wonder if that's true. Despite it being a long time since we last saw each other, Sam looked at me with an irritated gaze. Of course, there was no souvenir. I didn't even feel like complaining. Well, you pass, I suppose. Sam went around the house and said that. I felt my emotions fading away again. As long as Sam was around, I was an emotionless robot. I thought to myself again that I must divorce. After that, Sam often went on long business trips. Each time, I had to pack and then unpack his things. It was a relief that the hotels Sam stayed at did his laundry, leaving almost no laundry for me when he returned home. However, the scent from those clothes was something I really disliked. I couldn't count how many times I choked on the sweet, sticky scent of fabric softener. But complaining to Sam would only make him angry, so I always wore a mask when putting away his laundry. One day, my sister-in-law, Daisy, came to visit our house. Daisy, who is the same age as me but more active, has been great with me since the beginning of my marriage. I served Daisy some cake and tea I had made, and she sat down. After taking a bite, Daisy showed a smile. Lisa's cakes are always really delicious. My brother is so lucky. Is that so? What's wrong? Something happened? No, it's nothing. As I forced a smile, Daisy looked at me suspiciously. I offered her more cake while trying to change the subject. How about you, Daisy? Oh, listen to this, he left his socks lying around again. Isn't that cute? It's not cute. Daisy's he refers to her recently married husband. Apparently, a familiar face from the neighborhood, her husband, who is 10 years younger than her, pursued Daisy for 10 years before they got married. Initially, Daisy treated her husband like a child, but after being wooed for 10 years, she was charmed. Despite complaining, they somehow lived together happily. I felt very envious of my sister-in-law and her husband. Hey! Is everything ready? Ah, yes, it's ready. You're really slow. I'm sorry. It seemed Sam hadn't noticed Daisy's visit. Since we hardly talk, I hadn't informed him that she was coming. So, it was no surprise that Daisy was shocked by Sam's behavior. Sam headed straight for the entrance without showing his face in the living room. make sure everything is cleaned up. Sam said that and left while I was having a cup of tea with Daisy. What's with that attitude? It's fine. It's not fine. Daisy got angry for me, getting too used to Sam's attitude, and then she offered to help clean. Ugh, my brother really does not know how to clean. Sam's room was quite a mess. Daisy and I chatted while tidying up. In the midst of it, Daisy reached for something. Oh, that's... I tried to stop Daisy from opening the drawer without permission. But before I could, I heard Daisy's surprised voice. What's this? Oh. What happened? Oh, no. I was speechless at the photo in Daisy's hand. A happy family photo and a completed divorce paper. That was my wake-up call. Daisy, will you help me? Of course. Having gained a strong ally, I began preparing to fight. The first step was getting rid of everything. With that thought in mind, I rolled up my sleeves. Daisy and I stuffed Sam's belongings into trash bags. We saved everything that could serve as evidence, including notebooks, photos, and letters. In the photos, Sam always had the gentle smile of our early marriage days. I collected them emotionlessly, while Daisy reacted to each one, expressing disgust and surprise each time. Hey, let's go to the city office now. Yes, let's do that. Daisy suggested it as if she came up with a mischievous plan, and I smirked back. Sam said, make sure everything is cleaned up. Let's clean up this relationship entirely. I quickly packed my immediate belongings, disposed of all of Sam's belongings, and headed to the city office in Daisy's car. After submitting the divorce papers, I went to stay at Daisy's house. Sister-in-law. Sorry for intruding. Daisy's husband was initially very surprised, but after hearing the situation from Daisy, he became even angrier than she was. To someone who had loved a single person for over a decade, what Sam did was unforgivable. Sister-in-law, you're welcome to stay here as long as you need. I appreciate it, thank you. After expressing my gratitude to Daisy, she apologized in return. However, Daisy had done nothing wrong. In fact, she found the evidence and even provided shelter. I was only grateful for Daisy. Sam said he would be on a business trip for a week. It would take that many days for him to realize I had left the house. I'll never forgive him. He's going to regret this. That's the spirit. Both my husband and I will help you. Daisy, thank you so much. Thanks to Daisy, I was filled with energy and motivation. I slept soundly that night, and the next day, I began looking for a lawyer. At the same time, I was searching for a new place to live, and through Daisy's connections, someone offered to rent me a room at a very affordable price. I gratefully decided to make that room my base as I continued my search for a lawyer. The first, second, and then the third lawyer I met with were all miss, leaving me exhausted. But on the fourth attempt, I finally came across a fantastic lawyer. Let's work hard together. Yes. Thank you very much. The lawyer's name was Mike, and he was a very stylish man. At first when I saw Mike, I was anxious that he might be a miss again, but it turned out that appearances can be deceiving. He efficiently handled everything from fact-checking to forecasting, making all my requests feasible. After discussing with Mike, we sent a certified letter to Sam's mistress. And we left Sam's copy on the living room table. Sam called 3 days later. Hey. What's this all about? As soon as I picked up the phone, I was greeted by Sam's angry voice. I responded calmly. It's a certified letter, you know? So. Why do I have to pay $50,000 in compensation? As it's written. This is so frustrating. Sam continued to complain irritably and kept lashing out. Hey, whose money did you use for this? Mine. Huh? It's money I earned, right? No, it's mine. While Sam provided the living expenses, my income became sufficient enough to cover my living costs. Therefore, the lawyer's fees were paid entirely with my savings. But no matter how much I explained, Sam refused to believe it. You know what? You're just a useless woman. Just shut up and do the housework, and I'll keep you provided. Just come back home already. To be looked down upon to this extent. Fury rose from the depths of my stomach. I unleashed all of it onto Sam. Maybe you're the one who can't live without me? I have enough income to support myself. You are unnecessary in my life. You. Just shut up and listen. Just as Sam tried to retort, a doorbell rang on the other end of the phone. I smiled at the sound. Look, someone's at your door. Who's here at such a timing? Dad, Mom. I almost laughed at the predictable turn of events but held it back, speaking into the phone. Mother-in-law, your timing is impeccable. Lisa, thank you for letting us know. We'll deal strictly with this foolish son of ours. Thank you. I thanked them and hung up the phone. My in-laws were both former teachers who strictly adhered to discipline. They were strict not only with themselves but also with others. Sam always said he was scared of his parents, but to me, they were kind and good in-laws. They would never condone Sam's infidelity. A few hours later, Daisy received a call from my father-in-law saying he had severely reprimanded Sam and wanted to arrange a meeting for discussion. We'll come with you. Daisy, thank you so much. I contacted my parents to schedule the discussion. They cried after hearing my story, making me feel somewhat guilty. Mom, I'm sorry for all this trouble. What are you saying? Your happiness is what matters most. For now, let's cut this bad tie as soon as possible. Yes, we might need some cleansing to take this bad juju away. Maybe I should do that too. I could hear Dad panicking on the other end of the phone as Mom said that, and I chuckled, playing along with her mischief. My parents had an arranged marriage, but they were so happy that others envied them. My positive view of arranged marriages was influenced by seeing how well my parents got along. It would be unthinkable for them to ever divorce. Mom, try not to tease Dad too much, okay? I'm counting on you for the day of discussion. Right, your father is such a crybaby. Leave the discussion to me. I could already hear the nearly tearful, flustered voice of my dad over the phone. What a heartwarming scene that is. After a bit more small talk with Mom, I hung up the phone. On the day of the discussion, because there were many of us, I chose our home as the venue. On the day, my lawyer, my sister-in-law and her husband, my in-laws, my parents, and I, totaling 8 people, gathered in front of the house. Entering the house, we were all shocked. What is this? It's filthy. Ugh, it looks like my brother's room from back in the day. Even my in-laws were speechless at the mess. Sam was never great at tidying up, but he wasn't this bad. According to Daisy, this was because Sam had been hiding his true nature and was dumping everything on me. Sam was sitting at the living room table, zoning out, and when he noticed us, he started crying and tried to cling to me. My father-in-law stopped him, and Sam began to shout. Lisa, come back to me. Without you, I. Seeing Sam crying pathetically did nothing to me. I realized I no longer loved him and looked down at him with a smile. Why are you laughing? Look, it's all dirty because of you. Where have you been instead of doing the housework? We're already divorced, so I have no intention of doing the housework for this house. Sam's eyes widened at my words. Indeed, I hadn't yet told Sam that I had filed for divorce. I squatted down in front of him to tell him the truth. You told me to make sure everything was cleaned up. So, I did exactly that. Your room and our relationship. So that's why all my stuff was gone. Sam was shocked. I smiled and nodded, and his face turned red with anger. Don't mess with me. Who do you think has been supporting you all this time? That would be you. And I'm grateful for that. You repay kindness with betrayal. Oh, but I thought I was paying my dues with housework. With every retort I made, Sam seemed ready to burst with rage. Then, as he raised his hand to strike me, it was Sam who ended up getting hit. Holding his cheek in pain, Sam was stunned. glaring at him while catching her breath, was none other than my mother-in-law. I knew you were a bit insensitive, but I never imagined it would be to this extent. What you've done is unforgivable. Mom. Tears in her eyes, my mother-in-law stared him down, then turned to kneel before my parents and me. I deeply apologize for my son's outrageous behavior and for the pain he has caused Lisa. Mother-in-law, please, get up. You've done nothing wrong. My mother and I hurried to help her up. She continued to apologize, crying. Seeing his mother like this, Sam seemed to finally realize the gravity of his actions. Just as Sam started to speak, the doorbell rang at the perfect moment. With a smile, I went to greet our guests. Welcome, thank you for coming. Sorry for being late. No, you've arrived at just the right time. Please excuse the mess and come in. I led the guests into the living room. Sam's eyes widened in shock upon seeing them. Sherry. Sam. Sherry, the woman called by her name, awkwardly uttered Sam's name. I apologize for the late introduction. My name is Daniel Tachibana. This is my wife, Sherry. Yes, Sherry here. I'm so sorry for everything. Sherry started crying mid-sentence, just like she appeared in the photos with Sam. I smiled at her, encouraging her to continue. Let's start with how you two met. Well, it all started at a class reunion. You were his ex-girlfriend, right? And then you rekindled your relationship after meeting there. I'm so sorry. I didn't know he was married. I couldn't help but burst out laughing at Sherry's words. Sherry looked utterly frightened by my reaction. I decided to explain the reason behind my laughter. Here's a copy of the account I found. This is your account, right? Why do you have this? You went as far as showing your face, didn't you want to be noticed? I pointed out a specific line. Wish his wife would see this? It showed that everything Sherry had said was a lie. You had an affair knowing he was married. What a liar. But I didn't want to be sued for emotional damage and alimony. Of course, you're going to be. Daniel glared at Sherry with disdain. Meanwhile, Mike decided to move the conversation forward. Let's proceed. Sherry, we've demanded $40,000 in emotional damages from you, and $50,000 in alimony from Sam. You're both okay with that, right? I'll be demanding $30,000 from each of them. Sam and Sherry shook their heads vigorously at Mike's statement. Then, Sam started speaking in a weak voice. How can we possibly pay $150,000 between us, especially when raising a child? Right, in this time with declining birth rates, you should be kinder to parents. Sherry's attempt to support Sam's argument was met with a cold stare from Daniel. Only I and Mike, who were informed of the situation, understood why. How dare you say something so shameless? What are you talking about? Sherry was still trying to hide the truth. Looking straight at her, my mother-in-law delivered the knockout blow. That child in the photo isn't Sam's, is it? How could you know that? I mean, that child is Sam's. Oh, really? That's strange. What's strange? My mother-in-law chuckled, leaving Sherry frustrated, demanding an explanation. Sam can't have children. What? I thought I had informed Sam as well. What do you mean? That's what it means. Sherry slumped down, clearly overwhelmed by the revelation. It seemed Sam had completely forgotten, despite it being about his own body, a rather foolish oversight. I knew before getting married that Sam couldn't have children. The mother-in-law contacted me before I responded to the marriage proposal to disclose this fact. Though I was informed that fertility treatment might not be entirely hopeless, we agreed not to pursue having children. But it seemed Sam forgot all about that in the wake of the affair and the child that resulted from it. Why didn't you tell me? I forgot. How could you forget something so important? Sherry screamed in frustration, but Daniel interrupted with a calm voice. So, Sam's not the father. And neither am I. I was on a long business trip abroad, and by the time I returned, a child had been born. Quite the shock. Everyone shuddered at Daniel's story. The birth of the child evidently did not align with the timing of his return. Further investigation revealed the child's father, but also another shocking fact. The child's father is a male stripper. Not only that, Sherry has a debt of about $50,000, all spent at his store. You investigated? How low? I'd say the same to you. Daniel remained calm against Sherry's hysterical accusations, while Sam looked dumbfounded. Unaware of any other men in Sherry's life, Sam was utterly shocked. As tensions escalated, Daisy finally spoke up. Both my brother and that woman are the worst. What do you think you're doing to my dear sister-in-law? I will never forgive you. Daisy. Sam, having always adored Daisy, was speechless being called the worst by her. Sherry, on the other hand, faced Daisy with hostility. What does this have to do with you? I'm her sister-in-law, so directly, it doesn't. But seeing someone important to me get hurt fills me with anger. Whatever. You'll probably get cheated on too. Caught off guard by Sherry's remark, Daisy faltered, but then her husband smiled and spoke up. Do you understand my feelings for her over the last 10 years? It took me 10 years to marry my wife. Don't compare my beloved wife to someone who changes her mind and betrays others so lightly. What? His calm and gentle tone carried unmistakable fury. Sherry was shook, unable to retort. Meanwhile, Mike laid out the settlement documents on the table. They were the consent forms for the compensation for the emotional damages and alimony to be paid to me and Daniel. Sam signed them with a lifeless look in his eyes. You're not going to divorce me, right? Are you kidding? Of course, I am. And don't worry, I'll be filing for a denial of paternity too. But that child is yours. What are you talking about? We've done a DNA test. Faced with Daniel's irrefutable smile, Sherry signed the document with a pale face. Well, whether you two stay married or separate isn't my concern. This house will be put up for sale next week. Sam, make sure you're out by then. Wait, Lisa, please Lisa. Ignoring Sam's pleas, I left the home I had grown accustomed to behind and returned to my new place, where I spent the night drinking tasty wine with Daisy and her husband. Later, I heard from Sherry's husband that she and Sam had separated. After we left the house, it seems they had a physical altercation. Sherry divorced her husband and moved back to her parents' house, where she was stripped of her child and sent off to work in a live-in job. In a workplace predominantly filled with women, her affair was exposed to everyone, leading her to be shunned. While I feel a twinge of pity, I also hope she continues working since she has to pay for my emotional suffering every month. Sherry's husband seemed a bit down but, being highly successful, remarried soon after. He married a woman who agreed to move with him, and after wishing them happiness, I haven't been in touch since. Sam was disowned by his family and lost his public servant job for engaging in an affair during work hours, claiming to work from home while spending most days at Sherry's. Having never worked outside of public service since graduating from college, Sam struggled to hold down a job and now works as a part-time road construction laborer. I know this because he frequently calls my former lawyer, Mike, to complain. I agreed to Sherry paying her share of the compensation in installments, but since Sam was disowned by his family, I asked him to pay the alimony in full. Naively incurring debt from dubious sources, he begged Mike to request for the return of the compensation so he could pay off the debts and pay the remainder in installments to me. Mike, of course, refused, leaving Sam to work day and night to repay his debts. My former in-laws began living with Daisy and her husband, a suggestion made by Daisy's husband which they joyfully accepted. They purchased a house near mine and now live in a duplex. I hang out with them weekly and maintain a great relationship, especially with my former mother-in-law, with whom I share a love for tea. The friendly fight between my former mother-in-law and Daisy over who gets more time with me has become a daily routine. Recently, I remarried to Mike, the lawyer who helped me through my ordeal. After several interactions post-case, he asked me out, leading to our relationship and eventual marriage on our 3rd anniversary, a month ago. Additionally, I'm pregnant and looking forward to becoming a mother next year. Coincidentally, Daisy is also pregnant, and we plan to be mom friends. Which one is it? A boy. What about you? A girl. Maybe they'll marry each other in the future? Who knows? After our checkup, Daisy and I headed home, discussing potential futures for our children. Our anxious husbands awaited at home. Seeing their restless figures, Daisy and I shared a look and laughed. Surrounded by worried but loving husbands and a trustworthy friend, I felt immensely happy. Oh, he moved. Let me feel. He's not moving now. Hey, why are you laughing? Just because. I wish for these peaceful days to last forever. With just 3 months until delivery, I eagerly anticipate meeting our child.
You're no longer needed in this house. Get a divorce for my son and get out. Finally, I can replace my daughter-in-law. I'm currently living under one roof with my husband, my mother-in-law Debbie, and my husband's lover in a distorted space. As Debbie shouted at me to get out while laughing at the idea of replacing her daughter-in-law, I coldly retorted, "The divorce papers have already been submitted. Please feel free to replace your daughter-in-law or do whatever you like." Unaware that the divorce papers had already been filed, the gleeful faces of Debbie and my husband Scott turned sour when I dampened their spirits. Well, that's if it's even possible, hypothetically speaking. "What do you mean, if possible?" Debbie exclaimed with wide eyes. I decided to enlighten her. "Well, it's simple. That woman is..." As I proceeded with my explanation, the woman's eyes darted around. Her mouth opened and closed without saying anything, and she began to rub her hands together nervously, showing clear signs of discomfort. My name is Lucy, a housewife. After getting married, I quit the company where I had been working since my new graduate days. Now I dedicate my time to household chores, living with my husband Scott and his mother Debbie. Scott and I started as colleagues at the same company and gradually grew closer through work and company parties. He was serious and strict at work, but laughed a lot and was adorably clumsy in private, which drew me to him. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and soon after, Scott proposed to me, leading to my resignation from the company to get married. Initially, we lived happily as a couple, but after, my father-in-law passed away and left Debbie feeling lonely. She suggested we live together. Most daughter-in-laws wouldn't want to live with their mother-in-law, and I'm definitely one of them. I enjoyed the carefree life with my husband and didn't want to deal with unnecessary stress, so I was strongly against it. Debbie wouldn't stop asking my husband, and he finally decided to put his mom's feelings first, which resulted in us having to live together. We're leaving behind our freedom and low-stress days. Now we have to handle small daily stresses. Whether these stresses are the reason my husband and I have struggled to conceive. Dreaming of a family where I could laugh with my children and husband, I have been longing for pregnancy since the beginning of our marriage. However, no matter how long we waited, there seemed to be no sign of a baby coming our way. We're both in our 30s, not young anymore, and the anxiety is growing. Debbie seems concerned about this, constantly insinuating that I'm to blame for our infertility. Of course, the reason for our inability to conceive is not solely my fault. However, Debbie believes it's Lucy's fault for not having children. It's pitiful that my beloved only son ended up with such a wife like her, never considering that her son might be the cause. Additionally, lately, Debbie has been treating me like a housemaid under various pretexts. She wouldn't clean up after herself, citing, "I feel too sick to stand in the kitchen." Or, when returning from shopping, my knees hurt too much to carry my bags to my room. Do it for me." It started with small tasks. Eventually, she stopped helping with household chores altogether, demanding things like, "The coffee after dinner is served too late," or, Is my best outfit ready for tomorrow's outing? As if I were a maid, while she spends all day lounging in the living room. Despite all this, what's worse is she criticizes everything I do. When I went to the hair salon, she accused me of extravagance with my son's money and eventually criticized me for supposedly skipping housework to go out, calling me shameless. I consulted my husband about her unbearable behavior, but he scolded me, saying, "How dare you speak ill of my mother?" Unable to confide in anyone, I've been carrying this stress alone. Meanwhile, my husband began to act suspiciously. His return home from work, usually on time, has been usually late recently. At first, I naively waited for him, thinking he was busy. However, gradually, he stopped having dinner at home, and sneaking back in the middle of the night became the norm. Scott has been leaving the house early in the morning, even on weekends, dressed in his suit, a stark contrast to his previous habit of lounging on the sofa, sipping coffee, and flipping through outdoor magazines. I found his sudden change in lifestyle unnatural and observed him for a while, but couldn't understand the reason behind it. Losing patience, I decided to confront Scott about whether he was truly working or not and quietly waited for him on the sofa late at night during the weekday. Around 1 a.m., I heard the quiet turn of the key in the door. Soon, footsteps approached, and the living room door opened. "Welcome back, Scott."
"Wow, you scared me. Why are you up so late? Not even watching TV? What are you doing?"
Scott looked genuinely surprised, which only heightened my suspicions. There's no need to be so surprised. I just had something I wanted to ask you, so I was waiting.
Huh? Do you even know what time it is? You know I come home tired and you're waiting for me without even considering how I might feel?
What time do I think it is? That's my line. Why are you coming home at this time every night? Scott seemed taken aback by my loud rebuttal.
What do you mean, why? It's work, obviously. What else would it be?
Work? How long do you plan to keep lying? Did you honestly think I wouldn't notice you crashing into bed smelling like a bar and using shampoo that's definitely not ours?
What? What's wrong with having a drink with my boss?
I pressed on as Scott clearly became agitated. Don't think you can fool me with that. Have you forgotten that I used to work at the same company? A former colleague who still works there told me Scott leaves on time every day. Scott's face tensed in a way that confirmed my suspicions. He was definitely cheating. I had already inquired with a former colleague about whether Scott was really staying late for work or working on weekends. Of course, the answer was no. No one was working on weekends. However, that's all I could find out. I didn't know where he went or what he did when he wasn't home. As Scott's face turned pale and he stumbled over his words, a voice came from behind. "If it's come to this, there's no helping it. Let me tell you, Scott has a mistress." A mistress? Standing there, Debbie looked pleased with herself. Despite having suspected Scott's infidelity, the word mistress shocked me. I had anticipated Scott might be cheating, so the fact itself was not as shocking as it could be. However, the real question was why Debbie knew about it. "You're so clueless, it's almost pitiful. That's why my son started looking for a woman elsewhere. All because he ended up marrying someone like you." To say something like that. Anyway, when did you find out Scott was cheating? Debbie showed no remorse. Instead, she affirmed her son's infidelity and continued to paint me as the villain. "From the very beginning, it was my suggestion. I told him to ditch the failure of a wife like you and have children with a proper lady from elsewhere." Excuse me? I can't even begin to understand what you're saying. "Right after that, my son told me he found a wonderful woman and started dating her. I met her once, and unlike you, she was a fine young lady. Young, beautiful, and well-mannered. If only he had met her before meeting you." Stunned by Debbie's words, I struggled to comprehend them, but my mind wouldn't cooperate. Scott seemed relieved to have support and regained some color in his face, yet he remained silent. Debbie, looking down on my silence, continued. "We've already been planning it, the three of us. A wife who can't bear children for my son is unnecessary. So as soon as we're ready, we decided to let his mistress move in. It's already been decided." Wait a minute. Do you understand what you're saying? Are you seriously planning to let my husband's mistress move into this house? Do you realize how absurd and insane that is?
Hey, how dare you speak to Mom like that? Who's being unreasonable here? Besides, this was a decision made between Mom and me. Listen, the prosperity of our family is the most important thing to us. That means you're now useless to us. Get it? Be thankful. I'm not saying you have to leave the house, but you must thoroughly keep up with the housework even after my lover arrives. Understood?
Suddenly, my usually quiet husband began to talk non-stop. It seemed like they were truly planning this all along. Seeing me speechless and unable to utter a word, Scott sneered at me.
You're welcome to oppose our plan, but if you do, we'll proceed with the divorce under the assumption that you're at fault. The paperwork is already filled out, so do as you wish from here. I mean, I doubt a stay-at-home wife like you could manage anything anyway.
With those words, he thrust the divorce papers at me, and both Scott and Debbie left the living room. Sitting alone on the sofa, I struggled to understand what was going on, but even as the morning light started to filter in, my mind was still in chaos. I tried repeatedly to convince him to rethink, desperately telling my husband that I would forget this incident if he broke up with his lover now. However, they both refused to listen and continued to ostracize me, and about a week ago his lover truly began living with us. Realizing I could no longer live with them, I attempted to leave before his lover arrived, but I was constantly monitored by Debbie and couldn't even pack a few belongings. My chance to leave was possibly only during the hour I could go grocery shopping in the evening. By the evening, the lover arrived. My belongings had mysteriously vanished from the bedroom Scott and I shared, now thrown into a small room being used for storage. I immediately understood the silent pressure indicating that was my room from now on. It reminded me of Cinderella being bullied by her stepmother and stepsisters, but unlike the fairy tale, this was my grim reality. Unlike Cinderella, who had a happy future marrying a charming prince, I had to face the reality of being mistreated by the man who was once my prince, leaving me feeling utterly miserable and sad. While trying to make a sleeping space among the chaos, Scott's lover, named Nicole, arrived with her suitcases. The polite greeting felt strange, but nothing I feared happened. I only knew she was called Nicole because I overheard Scott and Debbie referring to her that way. I also heard Nicole's astonishing remarks. "I'm so happy to come to a house where a maid lives and works for us." Seeing Lucy's face, I can see why Scott fell for Nicole. Haha. Such demeaning words about me became a daily occurrence. Nicole no longer recognized me as Scott's wife, treating me just like a housemaid, similar to Debbie. I knew resisting Nicole would only bring Scott and Debbie running into her defense with fury, and wanting to avoid further conflict, I complied with Nicole's demands. And that's how it all started, living under one roof with my husband, his mom, and his other girl, and it drove me crazy. I woke up earlier than anyone to prepare breakfast, often redoing it if it wasn't to their liking. During the day, I was treated like a servant by Debbie and Nicole, facing a barrage of snide remarks if I didn't immediately attend to them upon being called. In the evenings, they would demand whatever they wanted for dinner, berating me if I missed even a single request. Things would calm slightly when Scott returned home, but the loud voices of him and Nicole from what used to be our bedroom haunted me nightly, forcing me to sleep with my ears covered. Waking up today, a week later, I was shocked to find a lot of my hair on the pillow due to severe stress, a significant weight loss of over 10 pounds, and a lack of appetite. My body and spirit were undeniably breaking down. The thought of continuing this life until death brought on unstoppable tears and nausea. For my own sake, I had to do something about these three people's wrongdoings. With that resolve, I immediately decided to initiate a divorce from Scott. Days later, I was cooking aqua pazza for dinner, Scott's request since it's Nicole's favorite despite never having made it before. I had to research it online and make an extra shopping trip, which led to even more disparaging comments from Debbie about my inadequacy as a housekeeper. As I was setting the table, Nicole said she had something to report and asked me to come to the living room quickly, where Scott and Debbie were already seated. Sharing the same air with them for even a second was intolerable, so I attempted to leave the living room. However, Nicole noticed and with a smile asked me to stay. "Please, stay here, maid." While wondering what was about to be discussed, I waited for Nicole to speak, as Scott and Debbie eagerly munched on their food. Then Nicole showed a small black and white photo to both of them. From my corner of the room, I could clearly see what it was, something I had prayed for but never received.
Is this an ultrasound photo? Nicole, are you pregnant?
Yes. I went to the OBGYN today and they told me I'm 2 months pregnant. Hearing the long-awaited words, Scott and Debbie erupted in joy, transforming the table into a celebratory mood.
Nicole, thank you so much. This is the happiest I've ever been in my life.
Scott, with tears in his eyes, repeatedly thanked Nicole. You've done so well, Nicole. I'm finally going to have a grandchild. How wonderful. Compared to her. As the mood brightened, Debbie glanced at me and started hurling insults again. Now that we're having a grandchild, you're truly unnecessary in this house. Just divorce my son and leave. Nicole chimed in with Debbie's words. Exactly as Debbie says, living with the ex-wife, even though she's the maid, would only stress me out. What if it affects my health? Will you take responsibility? While caressing her belly, Nicole added fuel to the fire. Exactly. Now we can finally replace you, Lucy. To the three of them laughing loudly and shouting for me to get out, I coldly retorted. As you wish. The divorce papers have already been submitted, so Scott and I are now complete strangers to each other. We're both single, so feel free to proceed with any bride replacement or whatever you like. Scott, unaware that the divorce papers had already been filed, stood dumbfounded. What? Is that true? Then we can submit your and Nicole's marriage registration right away. Isn't that great, Scott?
Yeah, right. I'll go get it tomorrow.
I quickly dampened Scott's spirits, who was happily saying so. Well, that's if it were even possible, hypothetically speaking. At those words, Nicole visibly flinched. What did you just say? What do you mean, if possible? I nearly laughed, hiding my face as I prepared to reveal Nicole's secret. Well, it's simple. Nicole here is already married. You knew that, right?
What?
What? Simultaneously, a dumbfounded voice came from both of them as they looked at each other. Meanwhile, Nicole, having her secret suddenly exposed to the two of them, visibly paled as the color drained from her face. That's... Nicole stammered, trying to concoct an excuse as her eyes darted around and she fidgeted nervously.
Nicole, are you really married?
It's not like that, Scott. It's just that the divorce is taking some time. I'm completely separated, I swear. But as she said, my marriage hasn't been legally dissolved yet, and...
You've been hiding such an important thing from me this whole time?
Scott, deeply shocked, slumped back into his chair. I wasn't hiding it. Besides, Scott, you never once asked me if I was married. I was appalled by Nicole, who tried to justify herself when she couldn't escape her lie.
When we first met, you said you were just separated and lonely. I thought you were single. Who wouldn't?
But I really was separated. Exhausted by their childish exchange, Scott sighed deeply and looked down. Then, as if suddenly remembering something, Scott looked up with a trembling voice.
But the child in your belly is really mine, right? If that's the case, there's no problem. Sure, the marriage registration might take some time, but we can live here as before, right? Scott muttered to himself as if convincing himself that everything was fine, that there was no problem. I decided to shatter that sliver of hope with a harsh reality. To think that the child in her belly could be yours? Such a convenient reality doesn't exist, Scott. You can't father a child. What are you talking about? There's no way that's true. Wasn't it you who was the cause of our infertility? Me, unable to father a child? Give me a break. Scott's face, taken aback by my unexpected declaration, was dripping with sweat. I presented him with the results from a fertility clinic we had visited years ago. What's this? This is proof of your infertility. When we received these results, you blamed me without even looking at them. Keeping them turned out to be a wise decision. The diagnosis in Scott's test results was a sperm production disorder. Simply put, it's a condition where sperm production is decreased, making it difficult to impregnate a partner. So it's nearly impossible for you to father a child.
meaning that child in her belly isn't yours.
I can't believe it. How can this be? Then whose child is it?
Most likely it's her husband's, with whom she's currently separated. Scott, once jubilant, now hung his head in defeat, a stark contrast to his earlier excitement. Debbie, unable to believe her son was infertile, kept looking at the test results, muttering, "My grandchild," her face devoid of life. Nicole could tell things were getting worse, so she jetted out of the house without even packing her things. Such a selfish woman. I had no time to deal with her right now and decided she would pay for her actions later, so I let her go. Scott, too, just watched her leave with a downcast look, remaining seated. Finally, looking up at me, Scott pleaded,
Lucy, I'm sorry for everything. Please, let's start over. I have no one but you. Forgive me, Lucy.
I forcefully shrugged off Scott as he clung to my arm, sobbing and begging. Your apologies mean nothing now. And remember, you're the one who threw the divorce papers at me, assuming I was at fault. I have gathered all the evidence of you and your mother mistreating me, and your infidelity. You and your mother will pay for the torment you've caused.
I was wrong. I'll make amends for everything. Just don't abandon me.
Seeing him groveling and clinging to my legs, I felt no sympathy. It was all his own doing. What a pathetic sight he was. I shook him off again, packed my few belongings, and headed to my parents' house. Later, I heard from the lawyer that Scott was sued for a hefty compensation by Nicole's husband after the affair was exposed. The news of our divorce spread quickly at Scott's company, and it was widely known among my former colleagues that Scott's infidelity was the cause, leading to his ostracization at work. I also sued Debbie for a significant sum in damages. Knowing they didn't have the savings to pay everything didn't mean I intended to forgive them. Debbie once lorded over me from the couch, had recently started working part-time at a supermarket to pay off the compensation. It might sound terrible to wonder if Debbie, due to her age, will live long enough to repay everything, but just imagining her huffing and puffing while being bossed around brings me a sense of relief. After returning to my parents' house, I started a new job. My family welcomed me back warmly, saying it's good to see me again, and we've spent enjoyable times together, making me almost forget all that had happened before. Since coming back, I've run into old friends frequently, finding happiness in our casual outings for drinks. In fact, I've recently started dating one of them. No matter how many times I recount my past miseries, this kind person sincerely listens and sympathizes, acknowledging how tough it must have been for me. When asked if I'd consider marrying again, I can't immediately say yes, but I'm overwhelmingly happy to have taken a new step forward towards a happier life.
Paying off the house mortgage on my own was tough, so I had you cover it with your earnings. Now that the mortgage is paid off, I have no use for you. The only one I love is her, understand? Now get out of this house. The words spoken by my husband, with whom I believed I had shared many years of both joy and hardship, struck me like a blow to the head. It seems my husband Dan was unhappy that I managed the household finances and he couldn't spend money freely, acting as if he was the victim of financial abuse. Poor thing. Working hard to earn money only to have it all taken away. I would never do something so terrible. A young woman, who seemed closer in age to our daughter than us, looked at me with scorn, siding with my husband. Shocked by their words and attitudes, I was unable to move from the spot for a while. Despite thinking our marriage wasn't that bad, to be disliked enough to be told such things and even cheated on was unimaginable. At this point, repairing our marital relationship seemed impossible. I decided to divorce. After being told such things and cheated on by you, I can no longer stay married to you. Please, let's get a divorce. My husband quickly agreed to my proposal. As I decided to leave the house as he wished, he and his lover were excited to live together in this spacious home. Half a year after parting ways with them. Hey! What is this all about? I wonder what could have happened to my ex-husband, who called in such a panic. My name is Susan. I am a 51-year-old working mother who raised a daughter while working alongside my husband. Initially, I intended to quit my job after getting married, but upon checking my husband's salary after our marriage, it was less than I had been told. I thought we could live on just my husband's income at the beginning of our marriage. However, wanting children, the reality felt unsettling. Fortunately, my workplace was supportive of parenting, and my income was not bad, so I continued working after marriage. After getting married, I was surprised to find that our household expenses were much higher than I had anticipated. Naturally, I expected our expenses to increase compared to when I was living alone, but it was shocking to see more money going out each month than my husband's income. The likely cause was my husband's tendency to spend recklessly. He had a habit of immediately buying anything he liked. When you see something you like, you want to buy it, right? It's not like it's cars or jewelry or anything super expensive, so let it slide. Concerned by his frivolous attitude, I took over managing our finances. It was comforting to have my own income, especially considering how I'd feel if I had quit my job. After getting pregnant shortly after marriage, having an additional source of income besides my husband's salary was reassuring. Besides his spending habits, my husband was supportive in household and parenting duties. Our daughter grew up well with his support and started living on her own as a college student this spring. Just as our daughter left the nest, we finished paying off our home mortgage, and I felt a weight lifted off my shoulders. Returning to living just the two of us, and with the financial worries behind us, I thought of suggesting a trip to celebrate paying off our mortgage. It seemed like a good time to appreciate each other's hard work. With this in mind, I planned to talk to Dan about it over the weekend, not imagining I would be betrayed in such a way. The weekend I was going to suggest the trip, Dan returned home in the evening with an unfamiliar young woman by his side. "Welcome back. And who might this be?" The woman standing next to my husband appeared to be in her 20s. Could he be a subordinate of my husband? Yet, there was something off about it. As I asked, an unexpected response came from my husband. "She is Nicole. My girlfriend." What? What did my husband just say? A lover, even though he's married to me? I was left speechless, my mind going blank, as my husband scoffed and continued. "You've lost your looks chasing after work and household chores. I have no love left for you. The only one I love is her. But paying off the house mortgage alone would have been tough, so I had you do it with your earnings. Boy, you've really done a lot for me." Hearing Dan talk so gleefully was like a punch to the head. Without minding my shock, he kept going. "You're too strict with money management. It's like economic abuse, not letting me spend the money I earn, don't you think, Nicole?" Leaning on him as if she were supporting his stance of portraying himself as the victim, she spoke. "Poor thing. Working hard only for all your money to be taken away. I would never do something so cruel." A young woman, seemingly closer in age to our daughter than us, looked at me with disdain, echoing my husband's sentiments. Unable to comprehend any of their reasoning or attitudes, I stood there dumbfounded. Dan, seeing me not responding, snorted and put his arm around his lover. "Well, that's how it is. I'll be staying with Nicole for 2 or 3 days." Leaving just like that, Dan and his lover walked away arm in arm. Even after they were gone, I was too shocked to move from the spot. I knew the sweet feelings from the early days of our marriage had faded as we spent more time together as a family, but I thought our marriage wasn't bad. To think I was disliked enough to be told such things and cheated on. It's clear that repairing our relationship is impossible, so divorce seems to be the only option. However, we have a daughter, even though she's grown up. Is it right to divorce just based on our situation, without her consent? With these thoughts, I remembered my daughter was coming home for her university's long break in a few days, so I decided to wait and hear her opinion on the matter. Feeling troubled, I spent the weekend alone until my daughter came home. I'm home. Huh? Is Dad out? Feeling guilty as my excited daughter returned to her childhood home, I broached the subject. Actually, there's something I need to talk to you about regarding your father. The fact that my husband was having an affair, that he resented me mainly for financial reasons, and that I was considering divorce. Feeling pathetic for having to tell my daughter such things, I shared the events of the past few days and my feelings with her. I was afraid of her reaction and couldn't look her in the face as I spoke. But when I finished, she exclaimed, "Dad's an idiot." Surprised, I looked up to see her face flushed with anger. "Mom, you did nothing wrong. If Dad had kept spending money like that, we would have been ruined. And yet, he treats you like the villain and falls for a young woman who pretends to be kind. It's unbelievable. You should divorce him before you suffer any more." My daughter fully supported me, saying I was not in the wrong. I hugged her tightly. She patted my back, saying, "I'm on your side, Mom. I promise." Her words and stance were so comforting that I couldn't help but tear up. That night, my husband returned from his lover's place. He was taken aback by our daughter's cold reception, but when she said, "I heard everything from Mom," he seemed somewhat relieved. I wondered what he felt relieved about, perhaps thinking his affair wasn't his fault. The look on his face, as if he expected our daughter to accept his reasons for the affair, disgusted me deeply. After a silent dinner, I broached the subject of divorce with my husband. "After being told off like that and cheated on, I can't stay married to you any longer. Please, let's get a divorce." My husband nodded in agreement, surprisingly easily. As I was taken aback by his indifferent attitude, he began. "However, the house goes to me, and you need to leave. That's my condition for the divorce." Feeling my indifference towards my husband grow colder as he continued to act like the victim despite his undeniable wrongdoing, I couldn't help but feel a loss over the house, which I had mostly paid off with my money. However, if losing the house meant cutting ties with him, it seemed a small price to pay. I accepted his condition, and in return, I stated, "No division of other assets." Pleased with securing the house, my husband grinned and readily agreed to my terms. "With this, you and I are strangers. Once the divorce papers are signed, get out quickly." He was excited about living in this spacious house with Nicole. He surely hadn't grasped the full meaning of no division of other assets. With a cold gaze, I looked at my foolish husband, chuckling inside about his poor decision. Thus, our divorce was finalized. After I left the house, half a year passed. Getting used to living alone and enjoying my freedom, I received a frantic call from my ex-husband. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Did you take my savings?" "Huh? What are you talking about?" Confused by his accusation, he explained with panic and irritation that the credit card company had contacted him, saying they couldn't process the payment for his card usage. Rushing to check his bank account, which was designated for credit card payments, he found his supposed savings nearly gone. Shocked to find his money missing, he suspected that I had taken it during our divorce. Of course, I hadn't touched his money. Listening to him, I first suggested the possibility of unauthorized card usage, but as I heard more, it became clear that this was purely his own doing. After our divorce, Dan had splurged on whatever he wanted with his credit card, went on expensive dinners with his lover, and traveled abroad frequently. Naturally, such spending would result in high credit card bills. The money I had managed and saved in his account during our marriage, he had squandered in just 6 months. Despite having saved a significant amount for him, I was speechless at his foolishness. As he talked to me, he slowly realized the extent of his spending, his voice becoming quieter. "So, I'm short on money," he muttered about his financial woes. To him, I calmly replied, "It might be a bit late, but you should start saving whatever income you get now. You'll be hearing from my lawyer soon about the compensation. What? In between moving and changing jobs after the divorce, I had consulted a lawyer about seeking compensation for his infidelity. Things were finally coming together, and I was about to contact my ex-husband and his lover, so this was timely. As I informed him about the compensation, he began to rant on the phone. I heard him shouting about not having the money, but his circumstances were of no concern to me. It was his fault for betraying me with his affair and recklessly spending his savings and income without proper management. Deciding it wasn't worth listening to him anymore, I hung up the phone. Later, as promised, my lawyer contacted Dan and his lover for the compensation, and surprisingly, they agreed to pay without fuss. Given his earlier outraged behavior, I was honestly surprised by their quick compliance. It was a relief to have it settled smoothly, as any further communication could have led to unnecessary complications. Gratefully accepting the compensation, I felt relieved that the divorce matters were finally resolved, and I continued to enjoy my peaceful life. However, one day, my daughter contacted me with shocking news. Shockingly, my daughter encountered my ex-husband. According to her, as she was leaving university with a friend after lectures, she spotted Dan and Nicole lurking near the main gate. They seemed to be looking around, but the moment they saw my daughter, they rushed over with incredible speed and demanded, "Pay back the money we spent raising you." My daughter was so frightened by Dan's aggressive approach that she couldn't move. Fortunately, her friends were there to help, and my ex-husband and his lover couldn't do anything more and left the scene. That happened. I'm so sorry. It's a problem between your father and me, and yet, you got dragged into it. I thought the divorce issues had been settled, and yet, my daughter ended up getting involved. I felt regretful, but my daughter just laughed it off. What are you talking about? Sure, it was a bit scary, but the problems between Dad and you are also my problems, right? I felt reassured by my daughter's resilience, wondering whom she inherited her strength from. Although it was resolved this time, there might be actual harm next time. I needed to talk to my ex-husband before things escalated. However, when I tried to contact my ex-husband, I couldn't reach him. While pondering what to do, the situation took a sudden turn. The next day, while I was at work, my smartphone alarm went off. Thinking something had happened, I checked my phone and found that the alarm system at my new house had been triggered. A burglary? Startled by this first-time experience, I was then called by the security company. They had caught the perpetrator who set off the alarm, so I hurried home. After explaining everything to my boss, I was kindly allowed to leave early. Arriving home and seeing the person held by the security guard, I couldn't help but exclaim, "You too. Why are you here, and what are you doing?" Yes, it was my ex-husband and his lover being detained by the security guard. I hadn't told them where my new home was, so how did they find it? Upon questioning, it turned out they had followed my daughter when she visited my new home and found out where I lived. Why the hell are you living in such a nice and big house? That's strange, did you steal my money or what? I could only sigh at my ex-husband's persistent low regard for me. Of course not. I bought this house with the inheritance from my parents. I had inherited a significant amount of stocks from my parents, who had passed away in an accident years ago. One of those stocks soared in value after I inherited them. I sold it when its price peaked, securing a substantial fortune, a fact I had kept secret from my ex-husband, fearing he would squander it. I didn't want the money my parents had left me to be wasted on such frivolous things. With that firm belief, I had never told my ex-husband about the inheritance from my parents. Seeing my ex-husband's eyes widen as he listened to my story, it was clear that my decision had been the right one. If you had all that money, you didn't need to take compensation from us, right? It wasn't about the money. I wanted you to atone for betraying me. But why did you try to break into my house? Disgusted by my ex-husband's shameful obsession with money, I asked him about his motives, only to receive an answer that was equally appalling. It seems that to pay the compensation to me, he had sold the house he was awarded in our divorce. The house, due to its favorable location, sold for a good amount, leaving him with some money after settling the compensation. Instead of saving it, he squandered it once again. As expected, the money quickly ran out, and struggling for living expenses, he was persuaded by his lover to break into my house and steal money. How many times does he have to fail before he learns from his wasteful spending habits? As I pondered this, my ex-husband approached me with a pale face, desperately clinging on. "Please, don't call the police. I'm truly sorry, and I promise I won't trouble you again. Okay?" His desperate apologies and his lover's reluctant bow made for a pitiful sight. Casting a brief glance at them, I called the police. "I caught someone trying to break into my house, and the security company has detained them. Could you please come and take them into custody?" When my ex-husband realized I had called the police, he started to rage. "Are you kidding me? Didn't I tell you not to call the cops?" However, he was firmly restrained by the security personnel and, unable to resist much, he eventually gave up and hung his head in defeat. Eventually, the police arrived and took the two away. Further investigations revealed that they had also broken into other homes and committed theft. Evidence such as fingerprints from other crime scenes matched theirs, leading to a conviction and a prison sentence after a trial. My ex-husband was fired from his job and became unemployed. Given his age and criminal record, he would likely struggle to find employment after serving his sentence. His lover broke up with him during the trial. In court, my ex-husband claimed he was trying to raise money for his beloved girlfriend, but she decided he was no longer of any use to her and publicly broke up with him in front of the judge and spectators, leaving him shocked by her betrayal. Throughout the trial, the lover maintained she was not at fault and showed no remorse. Further, a search of their residence revealed plans for future burglaries, leading to her being seen as the mastermind and receiving a heavier sentence than my ex-husband. I don't know where they are or how they are living now. After their arrest, I sold the house they knew about and moved to a highly secured apartment in the town where my daughter's university is located. The convenience of both of us living alone means my daughter sometimes visits me. I enjoy my work and lead a fulfilling private life, free from any nuisances. I cherish the peace I've finally found, living each day contented.